What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Questioning Constructs. We are back for another round. Where we're gonna jump into topics here at first, face down. Um,
That's the only way
if
we
you
like to
guys,
do it.
yeah, if you guys don't know by now, I think we're quite a few episodes in. I think at some point we'll be able to drop just introducing our names every time. But what's going on, y'all? I'm John.
And I'm Rebecca. Welcome back.
Welcome, welcome. All right,
All right.
Rebecca's gonna go ahead and start us off.
Cool.
Shoot.
All right. So, first, I want you to give me a general category. So, think like, don't make it complex, but like food or music or, I don't know, art or like, give me
Like,
like a category.
light.
Light?
Yep. Color.
Okay. Color. Okay. Well, we'll take those two. All right. So, have you, I'm very curious about this because I have not, but have you ever met somebody in life that can like taste music or see shapes or I'm not talking about like physical shapes, but have you ever met somebody that has senses intertwined before?
Um, so I think I can see shapes personally. Uh,
That
but
was a bad
but
example.
um, but I think in terms of your other example, no, I've never met somebody who has that. But I think what you're talking about is synthesia,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna give the definition, but yes, you were already on to me.
Yeah,
At
yeah,
first, face down, John was already like, "Wait a minute, I see it."
yeah. I mean, I've heard of synthesia. I think synthesia is pretty cool. A lot of really talented musicians have come about through synthesia. But go ahead. What are we looking at with it?
Yeah. So for I've never met anyone, but so you haven't either. That's
No, never.
synesthesia.
I
Okay.
think it's a pretty rare, like a relatively rare thing to happen.
Mm. I maybe we'll get into this first before doing the other thing that I was going to do with this, but I actually wonder if this is kind of on a spectrum as well. Like my belief is that most things are on a spectrum, right? And I'm curious, like Beethoven came to mind. Let me just read the definition for anyone who doesn't know what this is, though. So, synthes- synthesia is when your brain routes, this is a definition from the Cleveland Clinic, but synthesia is when your brain routes sensory information through multiple unrelated senses causing you to experience more than one sense simultaneously. So, some examples include tasting words or linking colors to numbers and letters. It's not a medical condition. Many people find it useful to help them learn and remember information.
That's interesting because it says many people, which implies that it is a lot more spread out than I thought it was. So let me take a look.
Yeah. I
Um,
don't I don't think it's super rare, but I also wouldn't say it's common.
so
Um
this may get at kind of what you were mentioning earlier. From my understanding of synthesia without any research, so this is very layman's, but synthesia does run on a scale. And it is that crossing over of these different almost like feelings with like what you can see, your senses overlapping in a sense.
mhm.
So like I can taste orange, maybe orange is a I can taste purple,
Uh-huh.
or I can hear yellows. This sounds like
Mhm.
yellow.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of geniuses. Kanye West even claims this as well.
Really?
That
I didn't know
he
that.
has synesthesia, which
Huh.
I absolutely believe. But
What leads you
um,
to believe that though? I'm super curious.
it. it could be like false. I have no reason to doubt
Mm-hmm.
the claim in it of itself. But I think what lends credibility is the fact that there are geniuses in different areas of study who tend to have this trait, good, bad, and otherwise. Whether you're a genius psychopath who uh, may have committed heinous acts, or whether you are a genius musician or a genius artist. There are a couple of different names floating out there who have synthesia who kind of fit the bill. And while I don't, not everything Kanye does is my favorite thing in the world, and I don't really care for his political opinions. I do think that man is musically a genius, and that's pretty undeniable. He literally
Hmm.
changed an entire generation of music to the point where the rest of the world has been influenced by this single man. Only a genius can be on such a level.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Interesting. That wanted made me want to look up like who who's famous has claimed that they have this condition. Um or maybe it's not a condition, but just this aspect of themselves. But so the couple that Google threw at me, Kanye West isn't on this. It only gave me like 6 or 7 people, but Pharrell Williams, hip hop producer and artist,
I fully believe that as well.
he has chromesthesia, which means he sees colors when he hears music.
I,
He
I
considers it a
really
gift. Yeah.
I really want to see his movie that just came out. I really, really want to see Pharrell's movie. I think that's another name that has influenced many generations of music on a scale that is
Mm-hmm.
hard to imagine. Artists that you would never think have had music written or have been influenced by have. Pharrell is on another level. So his
Mm.
music kind of is like an is it an autobiography? Kind of like that Lego autobiography style. I think that's going to be pretty cool to watch, and really interesting to see, especially because Legos have, like, when you're mixing the creativity of that with music, which Pharrell is known for. I think you'll probably come up with something really fantastic.
Huh. That's kind of interesting. Like I don't know anything about him, but that makes me really intrigued and want to watch his movie for sure. And interesting, I almost feel like I wonder if maybe I'm curious if maybe people who have this, I wonder if they're already more artistically inclined. And it kind of goes hand in hand because like one person I don't see on this list is I just keep thinking of like Beethoven, um, Bach, like the great composers, like curious why they're not on here. But the other people, this one surprised me, but Marilyn Monroe
I didn't
reportedly
know
saw
that.
music as colors. Itzhak Perlman, violinist, sees different colors when he plays specific strings on his violin. That's pretty cool. Duke Ellington, musician, composer, and band leader, may have been influenced. Franz Liszt, I don't know how to say his last name. The composer would ask performers to play in different colors because he saw timbre in the orchestra that way. What? How is that even possible? Vincent van Gogh. That one makes a ton of sense. The artist may have had a chromesthesia, which means he associates certain sounds with colors. Some think his painting Starry Night reflects his synthetic perception of the world. That's kind of cool. And then Charlie XCX sees music as colors.
Charlie Clips. That's interesting. Um, yeah, I don't know that it necessarily makes anyone in particular more creative. Um, I think
But just having a genetic disposition is more what I meant. Like, I wonder if your body's
that's
already skewing that way.
that's what I think it is. So like I think everybody has an ability to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
So I think creativity is something that we explore, and we can come to our own feelings, dispositions, and ideas around. Um, I think the difference that we see, and why some of these guys are prolific, um, and that crossover of synthesia is because
Mm-hmm.
they're interacting with the world in a way that is not common to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that ability to show something different or provide something different, in terms of sound, color, feel, um, is unique, and can be treasured in the right hands
Mm-hmm.
if it gets put out there, because of its uniqueness. But that's not to say that, as an example, any one person is more creative or less creative than
Yeah.
another. Because I'm sure, like, how would we even measure the creativity of Pharrell,
Mm-hmm.
with who was it that you said? Was it Picasso? Um,
Vincent Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. How would we
Yeah.
compare those creativities, in any kind of sense of the word? I think they just, because of the effect, that this had on their senses, they just interact with the world in a completely
Mm-hmm.
different way that we don't get to experience, and that in itself is useful in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think too, I am so curious for people who have this. I think it's not hard for people who don't to conceptualize this with music, because how many movies depict music with visuals, right? And like different colors and sounds that are going on. I mean, music is sound, but like sounds in addition. So I think that one's easy to see how seeing colors when you hear a certain sound will help with the composition. Or a painter, I'm it was interesting hearing that he heard sounds when he saw different colors. That's pretty wild. But maybe that helps depict emotion into the painting. But what I'm also curious about, and I really hope that this video finds the population at large, because does anyone use this for like everyday jobs, like finance? Do you see certain colors when you're doing accounting and are able to make better decisions? Like, how cool would that be, just to be doing your finances and different numbers are associated with different colors, and doing that enough, you develop patterns of like, if I see, I don't know, if I see purple, that means like we're in a really bad spot. I think that would be really interesting to hear from everyday people how they're using it in their lives, because we have some examples of people who've made it really far with this gift helping them, but I've never met anyone in real life that has this. So I would ask them so many questions.
Um, yeah, I think I have quite a few questions myself. Like, um, eh, first off, I thought the like specific trait of synthesia being attached to like genius was a lot more prevalent than what it seems to be. Um, so that kind of throws my perception of this off, and it almost begs the question for me, like, does this cause problems for people in how they operate or associate in life? So, like, what we're seeing when it comes to these geniuses, and is an ability to kind of make use of this thing that happens, but it's like Rain Man, Who would
Mhm.
ever want to be Rain Man, even
Mhm.
though like the movie depicts something incredible that could never like that is undoubtedly a gift, right? But
Mhm.
who would ever choose to have that gift? And I wonder what the effect on an average person,
Mhm.
and I say average not as a derogatory term, but as in like, hey, I do have a normal profession where I am talking about taxes. Like,
Mhm.
is it something that does aid you? Because
Mhm.
I don't even know that I can assume that it would,
Mhm.
especially when we're talking about. Uh, you mentioned chromesthesia earlier, right?
Mhm.
There's actually quite a few different types of synthesia, right? Chromesthesia being one of them.
Really? Oh, I guess for
Yeah.
like which senses are impacted determines like maybe what they would
So
call the subcategory.
check this out, and for reference, anybody who is watching this, I am just working off of Wikipedia at the moment, so I haven't exactly gone through the sources. This is just what I'm pulling up here. There are two overall forms of synthesia. There's projective synthesia, which is seeing colors, forms, or shapes when stimulated. And then
Mm.
there's associative synthesia, which is feeling a very strong and involuntary connection between the stimulus and the sense that it triggers,
Oh,
which
how
makes sense.
fascinating.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. But like in that, there's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. There's at
Wow.
least 10 different forms that this kind of has been identified as, which is super interesting.
So maybe the what is it called? The chromiesthesia, maybe that's one of the more common ones. Just because it was mentioned quite a few times. Something else I was thinking about too. Oh gosh, I wish we already knew people and we could ask them these questions, but I have two questions that I've been mulling over. One is, at what point do you identify that you have this? And then I have to imagine that depending on which sense is impacted, your will determine how much of a help or maybe a potential frustration it is. For example, someone who their sense of taste is impacted, right? Like let's say they see a certain color and that evokes a specific taste. Are there colors you just straight up avoid because it's a terrible taste in your mouth? Or like, can you imagine if you had this really strongly, you're going about your day and every time you see the color brown, it like makes your stomach sick. I like that has to be harder than when you hear certain noises, you have colors appear. And I mean, I don't know, like what does it look like when the colors appear? Is it just over the sound wave that's coming towards you? Is it across your vision? I'm sure it's different for different people.
Um, yeah, I have to wonder if that is in fact the case. What's interesting is, and you made mention of this earlier, it's not widely studied, which means they haven't really developed any kind of clinical diagnosis to figure out whether you have synthesia or not. Which, going back to what you were saying earlier, the question of how would you even know or recognize, I have to wonder if it's really tough. Like the percentage of the population that can make their ears rumble or can
Mm,
do that with their
mm-hmm,
tongue,
mm-hmm.
um, things like that, where it's like, or even the conversation that gets had around like the idea of, do you hear an inner monologue,
Yes,
right?
I was going to bring
And
that up too.
that's not a
Mm-hmm.
conversation we had till I was 27. You were 26, right? So like,
Yeah.
um, I think like these types. I didn't mean to date. anything there. We should strike that out. I didn't even realize what I did until I did it. I'm so sorry. Um, we're
Oh, it
we're
doesn't bother me, but
okay. Cool, cool, cool. I do apologize if at any point in the future it does bother you.
oh
We
no,
can
no, no, no.
strike it from the record.
No. I get
But
told I look like, what was the youngest I just got lately? I think 20. And I was like, I'll
oh,
take
that's
it.
fire. That's fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what's interesting? What else is interesting about this? Aside from the fact that it's not actually studied in a large way, but only 3 to 5% of the population seems to be affected by synthesia, which I mean, those are pretty small margins across the board. Like,
Small,
I
but they
mean,
still seem somewhat significant, like 3 to 5%. But also, if it's 3 to 5% with this not really being studied, how much more is it actually widespread?
yeah, it could be, but again, I think this is one of those that probably falls on a scale. I
Mm-hmm.
think I've also seen some writing that there is some coincidence when it comes to autism. It lines up with autism
Oh. Mm-hmm.
pretty regularly. Not to say that you have autism if you experience
Mm-hmm.
synesthesia, but it kind of goes back to that whole thing of how we experience the world, and how it kind of changes the way we interact with it, and what we create,
Mm-hmm.
or what we get out of it. Um, yeah, I don't know. This is definitely it's one of those where it's like I don't think I think it's a pretty cool gift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it could also be seen as something that is tough to. I can imagine scenarios where it'd be difficult to live with. Um, I also think that we're coming up on a day and age where people will be able to experience this if they want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the things that I've said in episodes past is like the concept of like as soon as we have a microchip that I can plug into my brain and download my consciousness to the internet, I absolutely want that destruction, right? Like I'm willing to go that route, knowing the danger that it potentially holds, and I'm jumping feet first. Um,
Not head down, not face first, head down.
head first, face down. I'm jumping head first, face down. Um, but in this scenario, like considering that when we're talking about genetics, we're talking about XY chromosomes, and like I think synthesia comes about due to a certain feature on one of your X chromosomes. Um, how hard is it going to be to flip a switch, on
Mm-hmm.
like theoretical internet, and all of a sudden you speak in colors,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and your tone is taste. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that realistically could happen? I think so. Actually, I think within our
Mm-hmm.
lifetimes we'll be able to experience the conceptual nature behind
Mm-hmm.
synthesia.
That would be
Yeah.
interesting too for other um, conditions, like color blindness. Flip a switch and you can just immediately see as if you're the one seeing it. Something I know you just said that it was genetic that causes the synthesia, but something I find really interesting is I almost feel like there's a super fine line to us being able to experience something somewhat similar, um, just in a different way. Like for example, migraines. You know, amplify things. I had an experience once where I was out. I think it was about like midday. I was out with friends. Came back to one of my friends' places, and we were walking inside. And you know how your eyes like they take a minute to adjust, like you walk into somewhere and it gets dark for a second and then your eyes adjust and you're good. Well, my eyes never adjusted. And so I'm like, okay, am I just like staring at is it my phone? And I kept getting like, it was weird. It was like gray over my vision, or it looked like checkered and whatnot. And I'm like, maybe it's just me looking at my phone. So I put my phone down. I'm like, maybe it's too dark in here. Turn on the lights, still not. I was like, all right. So then I was like, maybe it's just me. And I pulled the blinds back, looked outside. I still was missing kind of like half my vision. It was weird. It was like this checkered gray like overlay, and it was really concerning. And it took about 2+ hours for it to go away. Stayed over there because I didn't want to drive, and I went to the eye doctor because I was like, I don't know what this is. I've never experienced this. And so I go there, and she says, "Oh, you just had an opticular migraine." And I'm like, "What is that?" And so apparently, where you get the migraine in your brain matters. So if you get it very close to the optical nerve behind your eye, it'll actually start messing with your vision. So while I saw like gray checkered, she says, yeah, a lot of people when they get this think that they're tripping because they'll experience these wild colors that aren't there, or they'll start experiencing like haze or get like bubbles or other sparkles, like other different things. And I just kind of sat there and I'm like, that's wild. And I was, what, 25 when I had that experience. So I think because our senses, what I'm trying to get at is because our senses lie so close together, I think there are certain experiences that could potentially mimic um, synesthesia. Obviously, just not all the time, but it'll give you an idea of potentially what it's like for someone with synesthesia.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Considering like there are a number of things that can be pointed at where like this phenomena happens in like the medical field. Like, I mean, consider people who have strokes who smell burnt toast,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
that's probably a very similar experience. Um, and then even more to like what you were saying there, I think a lot there are quite a few people, women probably more often than actually I don't know, but people in general know the experience of blinding pain. I know I've experienced blinding
Mm.
pain, and it's just pure white light.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's something that is really really hard for me to describe because it is really bad. I've had headaches like that before, where I've had blinding pain or like ice pick headaches have given me that
Oh,
at moments.
those are the worst.
Um, but Yeah, there was something you made mention of when you just spoke that gave me pause just because I read an article. I didn't read an article. I saw an article come across my feed earlier this week about a competitor to Neuralink who is currently Neuralink is the company that I'm always talking about. Like, put the microchip in my head. Um, a competitor to Neuralink has come onto the scene, and it's a company that is making 2 millimeter implants for eyes. And it's an experimental eye implant that um, has restored. I think there are a number of successful cases of it restoring vision to people who are legally blind.
That's cool. I heard about, I don't know if it was the same company. Years ago, they were doing an experimental eye treatment which gives you part of your vision back. I don't know if it's the same company, but that's awesome if we are going that
Yeah.
direction. Like out of all the senses, I can't imagine losing my vision. I would rather lose my hearing.
So the company is Prima or Prima. Prima is actually I don't know if it's the company is Prima. I think the implant is called Prima. what's the company called? The implant was developed by Science Corporation. Oh, it's literally called Science Corporation. Okay, so the implant is a 2 millimeter square chip that gets placed under the retina. Takes 80 minutes to complete, and it pairs with glasses that capture video using cameras on the glasses, and
Whoa.
then patterns of infrared light are then beamed to the chip, which is covered with 378 light powered pixels. Um, it then takes the light, converts it to electrical stimulation that triggers the eye's natural electrical pulses.
That's
That
wild.
is cyberpunk as hell, and I'm so about it. Are you kidding me?
You
What?
know, that
Taking pictures is
okay,
gonna be dope.
that reminds me of, I literally saw this I think like 3 days ago. There was a girl who was doing, it was an ad, but it was a girl who was signing and said that she was deaf since she was a little kid, but she was excited for these glasses. And so she takes them out of the box, and these glasses will take incoming words or words she's speaking and will translate them in the glasses for her to see as like people are talking so that she can understand what they're saying. I I think if this chip continues to change lives like that and continues to be um I don't know if I want to use the word perfected, but built upon, I can see other implications as well, like having something go across your eye like messages instead of in the glasses. Or even like taking the glasses concept. I mean, we already have the earpieces that will translate languages. Um, and then let you know what people are saying. So I think
AR
all of that is going to
glasses.
be integrated at some point.
AR glasses right now are a thing that are kind of up and coming, kind of alongside the VR space. I'm definitely somebody who's followed VR. I'm into it. Not like crazy into it, but I like it. I think it's cool. It's dope. More people should do it. Um, AR though, that looks really freaking cool. And like this idea of basically getting these lenses that transmit, crazy amounts of data that normally we wouldn't have access to without putting on this huge thing on our head. Pretty
Mhm.
freaking wild. um
Mhm.
I don't know, we're just we more and more move towards this cyberpunk kind of world as we solve problems, funny enough. Like, I think as we solve these problems and we increase the ability to communicate and do technical marvels, we kind of give ourselves the ability to fall more and more into a cyberpunk world. I mean, think of the bionic arms that already exist. Think
Yeah.
about the bionic legs that
Mhm.
already exist. Runners
Mhm.
who are out sprinting regular humans with their
Mhm.
new legs. Which unfortunate that they experience a situation where they need such a thing. But again, the marvels that come with it are pretty wild. And now we're talking
Mhm.
about brain chips that basically restore function in the brain to
Mhm.
help communicate with your body and stimulate senses. At, and we're talking about bionic eyes that restore
Mhm.
blindness and communicate information, stimulate information. Like, it's way cooler than I thought. I thought when we were talking about, like, when I was reading Legally Blind, I thought we were talking about somebody who, like me, like, my vision is awful. I can't see very far without being really blue. And in my lifetime, I would not be surprised if I end up being pretty blind. Um, if that is if that's the case, I thought what we were talking about is maybe like it transmuting information to like a smaller camera that like rests on the eyes like contacts, and it's way cooler than that. It is stimulating nerves to re-energize the eye and create the information, like transmute it directly. Like, I don't know, man, that is sick. Cyberpunk, I'm with it, let's go.
I agree with you. I mean, I think there's so many wild and crazy cool developments, and it's interesting to me that it all has to do with like um electromagnetic pulses at some point, like our bodies are made of electric energy, atoms, neurons, and even like in physical therapy, they use that for stimulation. Or one of the other things, going back to like the brain chips and whatnot, I think I mentioned this in another episode, but like Parkinson's, they're I don't know if it's a brain chip. I don't think it is, but it's something that helps like sends electric shocks at certain intervals so that way it controls the muscle spasms. So that way someone with Parkinson's can have more normal function. So that way the tremors aren't really interrupting their day to day. Or even going back to, I think, one of our episodes we had about like mushroom computers and nature influencing. One of the first things that kind of came out as the prosthetic legs and arms were becoming more bionic was kind of like the exoskeleton suits, where they were realizing that like bug exoskeletons, the way that some of these bugs are made up, where they have the skeleton on the outside, not only is it for protection, but it allows your muscles. Oh, how does it go? Like your muscles are utilized at a lower capacity, but you're able to do even more with it just based on how the exoskeleton supports is so wild. And so utilizing, I mean, you see robots kind of built that way, but there's other suits that are
Yeah,
also built
Tony
that way.
Stark.
There you go. Yeah. So I do want to go back to just to close the loop on this one. We had mentioned people without internal monologues. And so, for anyone who doesn't know, anaduralia, anaduralia, one of those two, or neither of those two. I don't know, but my best guess. Um, is the term for when someone doesn't have an inner voice. It's the absence of auditory imagery. So it can be linked to a condition called aphantasia, which is sometimes called blindness of the mind's eye. So I don't know when I came across this. I was probably in my early 20s, but there was a whole Reddit thread about people. Someone asked Reddit at large, they're like, do you hear yourself in your mind? Because I don't. And I didn't know that that was not normal until someone pointed it out. And so it was this long thread of just people talking. Some people didn't, most people did. But it was a great learning experience because I'd never considered that you didn't, there's some people that just don't hear an inner voice in their head, because I do. And then you and I talked about it. I think you said that you
Yeah, I
don't
have
normally.
aphantasia.
Yeah, it's wild to me. It's
Yeah,
so
I
crazy
figured
how. Hmm.
I figured it out just because same thing. Threads had popped up around the time, and then I had a really long in depth discussion with my mother about it, who
Hmm.
also has a degree of aphantasia. It's another one of those that kind of runs on a scale. Um, and for me, yeah, I don't really like. Um, Aphantasia is not necessarily the inner monologue as much as it is your ability to conjure imagery
Mm.
in your mind. So like it is still blocking of the mind's eye, I guess you could describe it as. But like yeah, like for those of you out there, the best way to explain it is if you were to close your eyes right now and try to imagine a red apple in your head. Um, Most people can actually bring up an image of a red apple in their head. I don't have the ability to do that. That should, oh, excuse my language, that just doesn't exist for me. It For me, I have a really, really difficult time like bringing up images. I can bring up concepts in my mind, but I cannot bring images. So, like, the idea of daydreaming is so interesting to me because a lot of people describe daydreaming as like drifting off and kind of like, living life in this like fantastical, imaginative way, or bringing up like conjuring this image of self in a different way. I don't daydream like that. Like, that's not daydreaming for me, but I do have like a version of daydreaming. But again, it's all in concepts. It's not really like any images attached. But yeah,
Now, I have a question for you. When you were a kid, how did like playtime and imagination work then? Like when, because like a lot of kids, like when you're acting something out, like I used to play with a lot of like horse figurines and like plastic dolls and whatnot. So, and I would act it out in front of myself, but then like I'd have the story like playing in my mind. Like how did that, if
no
any,
idea.
did it affect that? No?
I don't have I don't have a lot of memories of when I was younger. Most of that is kind of blocked out and kind of
Mm.
locked away. I'm very much like Finn from Adventure Time, except I have no control over it. Um, yeah, it's all just gone. Like, if I try to think back to certain things, certain times in my life, most of it is like, for those who are visual, it's almost like a black fog or mist. Like, it's just empty. There's nothing
Interesting.
there for me to recall. There are memories that I have that are like ultra specific, but I couldn't even like give you points in time for them. Like, I remember being at my my titi's house with my abuela, and it was snowing in Connecticut. And a dog went ahead and peed on like a snowman we built. For some reason, that's like a super strong memory. When I like one of the earliest memories that I can conjure up. That had to have been when I was like 7, 6, 7. Had to have been, if I were to put a finger on it. But like, even when I try to think of those memories, it's really difficult to it's really difficult to picture any of it. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I can't. Dreaming is interesting because I can like see things and dream. Um
I was just about to bring that up actually.
um yeah, I believe, I know for a fact I can see. Do I know for a fact? I'm pretty sure. It's hard because, like, where does the line between a concept of a thing and an image of a thing start and stop, right?
Mm.
Because there's at some point you give so much detail and information to a thing that it becomes visual in nature,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, like, a perfect example is not a perfect example, but when I was younger, being able to read, oh wow, this is a really interesting connection that I just made to a conversation we just had yesterday. But when I was younger, reading Harry Potter and being able to imagine that entire world, right? I was able to come up with ideas of what that would look like. Um, Actually, I don't even know that I could. So weird. Oh, very weird.
Do you
Um,
think that maybe part of that is just because it's hard to conjure it if it happens? it's
It's
also
hard to
hard for
know.
it to stick. Well, yeah, to
Yeah.
know, but like also for it to be something that's so easily pulled up again. Like if you, I bet you, if you were in the moment and someone was like, "Stop! What did you like? What are you like?" If you were reading Harry Potter and someone's like, "Stop! What were you thinking?" Then maybe you'd be able to like
Well,
express then. But I'm wondering if like the long term retention
even
is
then,
more
like
difficult.
the reason I'm having such trouble with it is because even then, I feel like even at that age, if you ask me to then describe what I see, right? I don't know that I tell you that I see anything. I think I would
Mm,
describe the concept of what I imagine to be there, right? But it
interesting.
wouldn't be a visual. Like you couldn't you could you could draw the concepts and place the concepts in its appropriate place. But if I were to try and give those concepts to you and placement to you myself, you'd probably get a weird looking room, like a jumbled mess.
Mm-hmm.
Because visually it doesn't get like uh, think. I don't know. But what's interesting
Mm-hmm.
about this is our conversation about children.
Oh
Oh,
no. Oh, you
pretty
back?
fire.
Okay.
Pretty dope. Children being in that suggestive, hypnotic state of mind where they're open to more suggestive ideas,
Mm-hmm.
where they can play out different um, they can imagine different scenarios in their head. They're a little more suggestive to that under like a certain age. I think it's like between 10 to 12 you're kind of in this translates like state.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I wonder if like maybe like even when I think of Harry Potter, part of that is me being in that place when I was younger, because I was reading those books when I was relatively young,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of going through that, and it being able to help in that imagery.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting. Okay, now that's such a fascinating concept. The thought that if someone doesn't visualize within their head, that maybe reading and other tools can actually teach that. And other people, like actual teachers and people outside of you, don't actually know that that's occurring and being taught through that. That's so wild.
I don't
Something
know that it
about,
could be taught though.
I don't know, like you're, that would be really interesting if there is a program out there, but I doubt it. But also, your brain is, very absorbent too. So maybe like just the act of practicing it, you might not have that as a tool for everything. But if you were to sit down with it, books like Harry Potter and have to interact with that every day, it might
I
assist
don't
in
know
some
because there was a period in time where I was very heavily reading on a regular basis, where I
way.
was taking in books pretty actively, and it's not like that ever changed. I wonder the opposite end of it actually. I wonder if this is something akin to being in a Neanderthal, like the fact that there's a certain percentage of the population that can be linked to this other version of human beings, right?
Mhm.
Um, I think personal opinion is probably something like that where it's like synthesia. It.
Mhm.
I don't think you could teach anybody synthesia, right? I don't think anybody can be
Mhm.
taught out of aphantasia. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's a not necessarily. I don't want to describe it as an affliction because I don't feel afflicted, but it is. It's a different modus operandi, is what I'll say. The same way synthesia is not a mental disorder, it would never be
Mhm.
classified as that, and it would never
Mhm.
be an affliction. Aphantasia is the same
Mhm.
thing. Like it's not
Mhm.
something to be fixed. It's just a different way of experiencing the world. And my guess is the
Mhm.
way that we kind of interact with information has to do uh, part of the differences in our opinions in the way we interact with information has to do with how we do those processes within our
Yep.
minds.
Yeah. I also think too, going back to what we were talking about with the eye chips, the brain chips, I think it's going to be really fascinating to see where technology takes us when learning about the brain. And I really do think that a lot of what people are experiencing, ADHD, neuro neurodivergence, and what we were talking about today, um, synthesia. What was the other one? Anesthesia,
Aphantasia.
anesthesia, aphantasia. Um, I wonder if technology is going to help us be able to better explain all those different variations. I mean, I'm sure it will at some point, but like I was just envisioning my head, like, you go to a museum, right? And you have something that can project and identify specific areas of the brain that it's associated with, or like what has to happen in order. Like, I'm just so curious if we'd be able to replicate some of these things so that people would be able to experience them. So, like, understandably, I think we're closer to fixing or helping in the causes. So, like, um fixing, with the guy who you were talking about that got the first brain chip that helped him with certain parts of the brain that weren't there anymore or were damaged. Parkinson's, like, we're closer to, I think, eliminating certain things than we are like having people experience them for themselves to see what the experience is like. So I'm very fascinated if that's going to be possible, with our advances in technology, if they are able to even more accurately understand and map the brain, because we have not even scratched the surface on the brain.
I don't think it's gonna be something that is a matter of whether or not the brain can be mapped out. I think we're gonna have the ability to feel those sensations a lot sooner than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably know what it feels like before we can explain it. And the reason I feel that way is because, again, this, I mean, the technology that we have now and the ability to manipulate information that we have now, like if we go into Excel and we set up a chart, can we
Mm-hmm.
turn numbers into colors? Um,
Mm-hmm.
we absolutely can, right? Can we
Mm-hmm.
turn numbers into sounds? Can we
Mm-hmm.
turn colors into sounds right now? We absolutely
Mm-hmm.
can. Can we do that in VR? We absolutely can. Can we do that
Mm-hmm.
in AR? I'm not sure that anybody has developed specific programs for it. But if we can do it in VR, then it will be done in AR.
Yeah. Yeah.
How much further of a jump are we talking between that and the time where you can close your eyes and start up some technological sequence that
Mm-hmm.
connects you to whatever program, and you
Mm-hmm.
can basically create almost like a hyper reality for you to interact in. Bless you. Um,
Thank you.
I just wish I could have blessed you before you sneezed. Um,
No.
uh, a hyper reality that you can function in, and then basically turn on and off. Like think about the idea of gravity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think within our lifetimes we will have an ability to experience zero gravity while sitting in a chair. And
That's interesting.
I think that I mean I played in zero gravity in games, and like there's a certain feeling that kind of gets attached to you that isn't real, right? It's all
Uh-huh.
virtual. But like there's a certain
Well,
part of the brain that gets stimulated. Um,
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, on that, taking things we already have in existence, If you remember at the fair, they had the machine you can walk in and it spins and you get to like walk up the walls.
Yeah.
And for a moment, like, I mean, we
So like,
have certain technology that could probably aid in that.
well, not even like we have chairs now that do legitimately twist your body so that it gives you the experience of zero gravity. So like,
Yeah.
again, how long before we can do that in a virtual environment that we create within ourselves, rather than
Mm-hmm.
creating an external experience? And if that's the case, and we can alter reality, or virtual
Mm-hmm.
reality to such a degree, that our experiences change, well, flick of a switch and
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking in blue.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, and that also go tying into something, I guess, a little bit more spiritual, if you've heard of this, but like light language. So like language that's not words, but it's more of like light. But the thing is, like we have other things like that too, like fiber optics transfer data over light waves instead of I don't know, whatever we were using before that, so much faster. So who's to say that talking in colors isn't going to be more faster, transfer more information than words and the
Well,
speech we
kind
have
of
today? No.
along those lines, one of the thoughts that comes to mind or questions is, if we had the ability right now to talk in colors, um, would our conversations get more complex or less complex? Um,
Gosh.
I think that's an interesting concept. Like,
Hmm.
I wonder if it would be easier. Could you have dialects if you spoke in color? I guess you could, right?
Mm.
Different
I think
shades,
so,
right?
but
Like,
I just thought of, here's what I think. I think the form of communication is simpler, because speaking in a color, I just see that as less work, but more complex in what gets transferred and transmuted within that color. Think of it like I can send you 5 hours worth of our conversation in a split second versus having to talk for 5 hours to get everything said. I kind of view it as fiber optics. Like you're sending more information quicker, but the method at which that information comes to you is smoother.
yeah, I mean, I guess it is like speed of light versus speed of sound, right? In
Mm-hmm.
which case, light wins out. Um, in terms of speed, I agree, more information transmitted faster. I think the conversations would become a lot more complex. I think it would
Mm-hmm.
become way more complex because of the nuances you'd be able to strike. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the inflection of green to magenta would mean. Like, or
Mm-hmm.
or like what a lilac to a saffron blue means. Like, what does
Well,
that mean in that language?
one, it's interesting too because if we're thinking in terms of light and the spectrum of light, do you both need to be on the same color to talk? Or is it
Or you
if
think like
you,
colors of
if,
frequency?
yeah, but if you talk or if you, let's say like blue and purple are right next to each other on the spectrum, right? Is that close enough to where the
See,
information can transfer smoothly?
that's so interesting because you took it in a very different conceptual direction than what I was thinking there.
Hmm.
That's so interesting that you go there.
How
That
did you
like,
take it?
so when I was thinking about like the idea of speaking in colors, um, I I was imagining almost as if you have access to the full spectrum of colors, and it's literally
Oh,
like
uh-huh.
basically you string together colors, and colors then communicate ideas, and then those ideas
Interesting.
become concepts that we work with. And so it's like, okay, well, maybe blue is sadness, right? Traditionally, like a
Mm,
really
mhm,
deep navy blue is sadness, but a
mhm,
light pink is is like infatuation, right? And
Mhm.
so, what if I wanted to say it was really sunny outside and I was infatuated with someone, but really, really sad at the same time. Well, maybe it's like this bright yellow to a
Uh-huh.
a light pink to this deep navy blue, but it happens so fast because it's at the speed of light that the
Uh-huh.
communication is happening. And so, like, does it transmute information quickly? Yes, but also like did we just like increase the complexity of like maybe the sentence just with
Uh-huh.
like those simple colors and like those are simple words. What happens when we add like the full expanse of
Yeah.
language and linguistics as a whole, right? Because you have to imagine every culture would be able to communicate in these feelings, right? And so
Uh-huh.
how complex does it get when you open up a world of language from English to Japanese to Russian to German to Spanish to whatever, and like they each have like a different way of transmuting a similar color, right? Like, so we
Hmm.
all know yellow is certain vibes, right? But
Mhm.
the place they put the point on the spectrum of yellow changes what they're saying.
Uh-huh. Now see that, okay. I think it's wild how unique our two perceptions are on this, because when I thought of it, there's only one language, right? Not that people today don't have a ton of different languages, right? But if we're just thinking in languages, in the language of color, it's a language. But the way that I was interpreting it, my first visual was two people standing and one person that spoke in blue with this, like, the 5 hours of stuff and straight to the person. And then when I expanded out my concept, I was thinking about um, wavelengths of light. And so each color, right, different wavelength. So some are like quick and some are slow. So depending on how quick or slow you want to get the message across, switching to the different channels. And maybe there's some people, brains are quicker, they actually prefer being on those higher wavelengths of light most of the time compared to the lower wavelengths of light. But then I was like, well, can two wavelengths of light communicate to each other? Because if we're thinking about visuals, you can only see certain things in certain light spectrums. And so I was like, I wonder if that would be the same for the language. So not like I was the same with you, that the person had the full spectrum, but like use of the spectrum, I think, is where you and I differed in our visualization and examples of it, which I find so fascinating.
Yeah, weird stuff. Weird stuff.
Interesting.
All right,
So to
shoot.
kind of wrap this up, there's one last thing. So I asked you to give a topic at the start, and you said light and color. So I think it'll be really interesting. So let's just use color because it's going to be easier. If you could taste colors, what would be, I guess just start off with like one color. What would be your descriptive word? And then what would be the taste associated with that descriptive word for the color? So, okay, so for example, red in my head just makes me think of
Spicy.
sweet,
Oh,
spicy.
so
Oh,
interesting that we go to opposite directions there.
uh-huh. So I was gonna say
Yeah,
strawberry, like it'll taste like strawberries. So yours
I
would
think of
be,
chili,
that's so crazy.
peppers. Yeah, bright red is peppers, chilies,
Okay, what about orange
spice.
then?
Um, I don't really know. Orange is such a weird one.
Orange, I would say, I don't know. I just get
Also,
this like,
is it supposed to be a flavor or a word or
so
is
it's
it
supposed to be a
just
taste, but I was
okay?
curious, like, I was curious what, like, if you had to put a descriptive word, like, what word would lead you to that taste? For me, I just,
Orange.
I feel like orange for me is delicious. Like it just seemed like warm um taste. What would the
Um,
taste be?
yeah, I don't. Orange is a
That's
weird
a
one.
hard one.
It's hard because I can't think of much outside of orange, and so like I don't know, like juicy,
But it doesn't have to be an orange though. Like what?
sweet
And that's why
sour.
I asked for this descriptive word because it could be, I don't know, like delicious. Is does something have to be orange to be delicious? That's where I
Um,
think it gets interesting, you know?
I just it's tough. I don't really have much of one for orange. Like I don't know. I think yeah, juicy. Juicy is probably
Mm.
the best word I can kind of put to it. I think that's the best one
Would
I
you still
got.
pick an orange for juicy?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I don't like orange.
Actually, I think mine would probably be one of the orange dreamsicles. You don't like those? No. Okay, you know what that did
But
remind me of though? When we were in Italy and we got the fresh squeezed orange juice, the pomegranate juice.
yeah, that was good stuff. That was definitely good
Yeah.
stuff. Um, I don't know. Blue is probably light, airy, crisp. Um,
I would say
that's
icy. A little on
um,
the cooler, cool. Blue is
uh,
cool.
that's interesting. I don't. I think maybe I would agree with that. Like, I think blue is room temperature to cool to me. Not necessarily
Interesting.
cold, but
I think
um,
chilly. Like pools are cold to me. Like water is cold, but
um, yeah, I
I
think
would do
blue
like
is a.
a drink, like an
I would
iced
do.
lemonade or
I think like maybe that's a good one for orange. Maybe like a little crunchy. Um, Orange might be juicy and or crunchy. Maybe not.
oh,
Maybe orange is crunchy and salty. Um,
oh, I can see that. Okay.
Blue is airy and cool. Red is spicy for me. Pink is sweet. Um,
I would say pink is loving or pink is soft. I would do a marshmallow for pink.
oh, I don't know. I don't know about
You
that,
don't
but
know.
pink is sweet. Pink to me is like mochi. Um,
Oh, that's good. See, that's still soft though.
it is soft, but it's like a way
Mochi's a
different
good one.
texture from marshmallow. Although they're kind of going along the same line, so maybe
Yeah,
um,
squishy. Pink is squishy.
I'll do soft and sweet. Um, like
Green, I think, is living, alive, is what I think for green.
green doesn't have much flavor. It's
Yeah.
very grounded. It tastes like it tastes earthy. Um,
I
but
was
I don't know how
thinking,
much I'm interpreting colors as flavors as much as I'm playing an association game. You know what I mean? Like when I think of
I
light.
figured,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
When I think of light blue, I think of Rice Krispie treats. So that's why I think airy. Like when so if I were to think of white, that would be my marshmallow. It would be
That's
cooler. It'd be
hilarious.
squishy. Like it's a word association. Green is earthy. Like it tastes like it comes from the
Matcha.
earth. Um, Brown is nutty. It's like, but this is all kind of like color association. Like what types of food come up most often for that color, right? Like
Hilarious. I thought
Yeah,
of brown as like thick, like the Nutella. Like that's what
it
I think of.
could be. I mean, that's also a very
Creamy.
deep nerd. Like, I mean, Nutella nut is literally
Yeah.
in the word. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I think nutty. You could go as far as saying chocolatey, but chocolate is
Mhm.
what? It's a nut. Not a nut. It's a
Mhm.
bean, right? Like,
Yeah, the
is it
cacao bean. Yeah.
cacao bean?
Cacao?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a bean. It's something
I
coming
think
out
it's
of
a
the ground the same way nuts are.
yeah.
Off of trees and ish. Um,
What's
let's see.
yellow?
Um,
Yellow is
yeah,
buttery to me. But I wouldn't pick butter because it's like buttery and happy. What would I pick for yellow?
yellow is sour for me. Um,
Wow, that's so interesting.
yeah, I think of lemons. You know, I
I mean,
think of like I think of Starbursts and Sour Patch Kids, and
ooh, I don't know what I would actually. I think yellow would probably be mochi for me. It's a
that's
little bit
interesting.
like yeah, like it needs to be like soft, but like not super chewy, sweet-ish, but doesn't have to be sweet.
But see, like even like mochi, that was word association for me too. Um, what it was is pink for me was mochi, right? Pink
Mm-hmm.
is sakura, cherry blossoms is
Mm,
Japan, is sweet,
mm.
good feeling mochi. You know,
So interesting.
yeah, yeah. What's crimson?
Oh, that's I immediately thought of,
Oh,
oh, what are those? What
let
are the
me
big?
ask the colors. Hold on,
Not
I got you.
not big.
I'm gonna throw you for a loop. Let's go.
You know
We'll do this for a second.
what is the? It's not Mike and Ike's. What's the red? Not tamal. Is it
Blood
tamales?
sausage.
What?
Um,
No.
that was
Which
so
John ate, by the
disgusting.
way, in
That
Puerto
was so.
Rico,
Listen,
and I watched it.
I didn't know what I was ordering, but I was down to try whatever to my
There were these two like
infinite
sweet
sadness.
older ladies right next to us, and they kept looking over and like talking amongst themselves. And when John got the blood sausage, the waiter even looked at him like, "Here's your blood sausage." And I'm sitting here like,
I had
"Nope." And then the
no
old
idea.
ladies were like giggling, and so he's like, tried one, and then they just straight up started laughing.
God, it was so
and,
awful. It
and I
was
think one of them
grainy.
asked you
Oh,
like, "It's good, right?" And you're like,
it was so grainy and nasty.
"Mm-hmm."
Congealed blood. Ugh.
Ugh,
Um,
no.
yeah. Let me throw a couple of colors at you before
Okay.
we wrap up here. Make it interesting. What is lilac?
Ooh. Oh, lilac is I just think of like dusky or like glitter or like something very very like I think of like a powder,
Okay.
like some sort of sprinkly powder.
What flavor would you assign to it?
Flavor is gold dust or fairy dust and edible glitter. What would I assign as a flavor? Maybe blue raspberry,
What's navy blue?
navy
What's
blue.
royal blue?
Royal. Oh, you just threw two similar blues at me. Okay,
Those are
royal
not
blue.
similar. Wait. Do you think navy blue and royal blue are similar? I don't know. I disagree. I disagree.
Well, navy blue is like a darker blue,
A
and royal
darker
blue
blue
is
for
like
sure.
an
A little
actual
brighter
like
in your face.
yeah in your face. I just think of order with that structure, so I'd have to go with how you can use I don't know if it's sugar, but you can create yeah, I would say like hard candy. If Do you ever remember? Oh, what was her name? There was the cooking class in high school, and if you ever,
Mrs. Mrs. B, Mrs.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember, but she was
But anyways,
freaking
we
wonderful.
made.
That lady was amazing.
She was interesting. I think she was a really good teacher, but I think my class kind of gave her a run for her money. But
I
um,
think Mrs. Borland,
there you go.
Mrs.
Wow.
Borland. Yeah, she had a profound effect on me. Shoot, that was kind of I was already on the path for childhood education, but she
Hmm.
really kind of pushed that hardcore. And she taught me a couple of really good house skills. Um, she was mean,
I
and I
think
liked that.
so. I think she definitely her passion was for the kids and the education portion, not so much for the cooking
Definitely not so
portion.
much. Home ec was
Yeah.
not the class for her, which I mean, fair enough
No.
because that was like one of those mandatory classes, kind of like the
Yeah.
workshop class we all had to do.
Yeah.
But her actual classes were special childhood and special education classes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think she far excelled in those. But I think the cooking classes, especially for my class, we kind of
Although,
um,
like, there's
gave
always
gave
been
her
a
creative solutions.
recipe that I've always wanted to recreate. She taught us how to make ricotta cookies. I've always wanted to figure that out again. I haven't.
I don't
Haven't
think we even. Here's the thing. I think my class didn't get to do a whole lot of whatever the other classes
pain in the
did. So like
ass.
we didn't make the ricotta cookies. I can tell you exactly what we made, and then I'll tell you which one reminds me of navy blue. We tried to make homemade pasta. Wasn't a whole lot of room for that. Um, but I understood the concept. We did gingerbread houses. We made rice.
Oh,
We did a tiny pizza, like
ooh,
tiny pizza. Um, geez, what
yum,
else did we? Oh, we boiled we boiled eggs.
pretty fire.
Yeah, and oh my god, what else did we do? Oh, and then we did something for Halloween where I think each person was presenting and making different treats, and I made Rice Krispies, so
That's
that one
fire.
was fun.
That's dope.
And the gingerbread houses were decent, but oh, and the one that reminded me of navy blue is we tried to make candy once. Didn't really turn out. So like I just think of like the sugar candy, clear candy, like how breakable it is, and that's what makes me think of like structure and order and navy blue.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Most
Uh,
candy was burnt.
what what what's your
Question.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask my question, but I couldn't quite formulate it. So as always, I'm gonna allow you to to kind of beat me to it. Um, Unless you want to wait for me, in which case I can come up with something. I'm sure.
I'll ask mine and give you some time. So my question to all of you: if you were to have two of your senses crossed or like one sense activated, what would that look like for you? What would you want to experience? I think for me, just man, how useful it would be to see colors when something is going on. Oh, that would be such a wonderful experience. But I'm
Uh,
curious what you guys want to experience. And what's yours?
um, Physical action and taste is what I would switch up for mine. Um,
In what way? That seems very broad. Like anytime you take a action, you taste something,
yeah,
or just during
yeah. I
certain
mean,
times.
there'd probably be like a a base, right? Where like standard like this. probably isn't going to trigger anything. But if I go jogging, I probably taste something. Or like if I'm
Huh.
falling, I taste something. Or if I'm like a scratching, I taste something. Um, a different
Can you
flavor comes
imagine
to
you
mind.
on
I
a
think that would
boat?
be
It's like a
that
speedboat,
would
like
be
moving that fast.
super super interesting. Um, but not quite the imaginings that I had in mind for flavor and activity, I'll say.
Well,
Um,
you just said it was
so,
like activity in motion. And so I was like, man, if
yes.
that's you're experiencing it when you're falling, what happens when you're on a boat or when you're on
Well,
a roller coaster and you're just
these are very interesting
I taste
concepts.
banana.
They're not quite where I was going with it. These are very these are tame, is what I'll say. All right, for me, um, if you had to select five major colors to base your food palette on, what would those colors be? That would define your palate, your taste for food, like the things that you enjoy in food. So like for me, I think I would do like a soft pink. I would do a brown. I would do a red for sure, like a really really bright red.
Mhm.
I would do a um, I think I would do like a magenta, and I think I would do a white,
And
um,
are these foods that
or
match those
silver.
colors
Um,
or just defining your
yeah, I would say like these are kind of like the flavor palettes that you would have to work on if you had to choose five. So like there's kind of a
mm,
number of different operations here because first you have to convert your flavors into colors, then you have to
mhm,
decide which of those flavors are most important to you, and then you have
mhm,
to order the colors appropriately. Like so for me, I know I like a lot of sweet stuff. I know I
mhm,
like anything from cold to hot. I know that I like very I like grounded flavors
mhm,
because they're easy to spice and sweeten up. And there's a
mhm,
huge range in between those color palettes for me that I can work
mhm.
with. Yeah, I kind of like, and then
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that kind of like defines that color palette that I would paint my taste bud brush with.
Ah, okay. So I would do white, green, brown. I have two more. Um, Probably I don't know, maybe pink and orange.
White, green, brown, pink, orange. That sounds
Yeah,
yeah.
because
I
like
can see that.
he uses white, pink, berries, green salads, and of course, like any most vegetables. Um, what else did I say? Orange.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, could be peppers, could be citrus. Trying to think, what else is orange? I mean, but like mushrooms are brown, chocolate's brown, desserts are brown, white, and pink. I also like dessert. Um, do I have another one? Orange. Oh, what else would I do? I probably wouldn't do blue or purple. I'd probably have to go either red or yellow.
Drink red all the way. Let's go.
Yeah. Cool. All right,
All right,
guys.
y'all.
Well, thanks for being with us. Head first, face down into this topic all the way. Tell us what colors you're seeing when you're head down. So, love you guys. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you for the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.